In this episode, I'm joined by my wife, Sayu. I just want to have this intro before we get into the episode because the audio was compromised by a really bad storm that came through our area. We had to take advantage and use this time to record though because it did bring one of her sisters into town, and so we were able to have a babysitter essentially. Also, with that in mind, you will hear our daughter in the background. You'll hear her at times playing, you'll hear her at times crying, but just in general, I feel like the storm being really loud also kind of just affected the audio of this episode. Now that that's out the way, here's episode number 3. I hope you enjoy. What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Bridge Everything podcast. This is the Boca Chica Edition because I have a special guest here. My first guest, my favorite guest, potentially. We'll see how it goes. I brought my spouse, my wife, my partner outside of her cave. Round of applause for no social media having Sajudi.
Yay! I'm excited to be here. And I just got my first X account, okay? So, social media now having.
Well, where shall we go with today? Today the topic is going to be relationships, but I'll let you kind of navigate the segues and transitions and the starting point. Where do you want to begin?
I think, can we just talk about this initial Boca Chica Edition thing you want to have here?
Shout out to Boca Chica.
That is, in fact, where I was born and my family's from. However, I didn't necessarily want this to be called the Boca Chica Edition.
It's a good branding for when you're on the podcast. It is what it is.
Look, I'll let you do what you do. But in the topic of relationships, I think a good way to kind of start, it's really about dating and the standards and boundaries people have today. I think that's a great start to go on and see where that leads us.
Okay, so lead us.
All right, so dating today. So I wanted to kind of just talk about what that looks like overall. To me, it seems extremely unconventional and just a difficult thing to manage because it has become so
commodified.
Exactly. So people don't know anymore how to start a random conversation in the street randomly, which is, I feel like, how I was dating. I was dating very randomly, or because I either went to school with somebody or kind of social things, someone that knew somebody. But now everything is, let me date through social media. I don't know anymore how to start a conversation, and I think that's a great place to start today.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that it has been commodified and centralized, so there's a lack of spontaneity that exists. And with that, you're also increasing, it just becomes a lot more harmful. So there becomes expectations, because if you're on Tinder, people are assuming that you're just on there to get some draws. And so yeah, a lot of things just, it's reducing not only the safety aspect, especially for women, but it's a lot more pervasive in what we are expecting to receive. The night is judged based on if there's any physical connection, instead of working to build those things up, because the boundary's so low. You're not walking up to a stranger you meet in a grocery store, in a train station, or something like that. And so with that, there's a lack of, you could almost expect that there's, if you're coming across somebody online in which you have to swipe for them, it's just much more presumptuous.
But do you think that is because the ability to actually set up your standards when you meet somebody, the ability that people had to just talk to random people has decreased. Like the capability, more than anything, the capability to talk to a random person has decreased because of the social media era that we have entered.
Yeah, I think communication is it's bad communication is normalized through the integration of apps in the dating space. So good communication is a rarity. And I think that's the backbone of good communication is the backbone of any relationship, but also a deep understanding of somebody. And I feel like when you meet somebody on something, or when you even have access to someone's social media, there you're removing the discovery process. And I feel like the discovery process is extremely important in building a healthy relationship.
So people are kind of snooping into your social media beforehand. People are, yeah, kind of like getting under, trying to get to know you before actually
Just
getting to know you.
curiosity.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that what social media has done is remove that place of actually being able to just slowly get to know somebody as they're allowing you to get to know them. And in this era, it's almost like you just snoop before you go on a first date. You snoop before, or you get to know a lot about that person, including their height. Their height. Something as simple as that before you go on your first date with them. And it has created a place of accessibility, yes, agreed. But also, it has taken away kind of the fun parts of getting to know people.
Yeah. And then, I mean, even maybe we're jumping too forward, but, and then once you even are in the relationship, the way in which social media, to me, I feel like, well, I think both of us would say that social media makes it extremely hard for a relationship to have shelf life.
Shelf life.
Yeah. Because you're just bombarded with temptation left and right. There is, yeah, it's just in your face, all these options. The world is so small now, and so you're seeing irresistible men and women.
Do you think that
make
has
you,
led to higher or lower standards of dating?
more superficial standards? I don't think it's a matter of higher or lower. I think it's led to more superficial standards. So we're more focused on the exterior than the interior. And if you're focused on the exterior, there's always going to be somebody more attractive. There's not always going to be a better person, a better human, a kinder human, a more loving human, a more considerate human. But you can always find somebody with six packs or ass.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think you're right, and I think that that is why there is this pressure, this immense pressure that young women have now, and men as well, men alike, because you're dating online, so people have to go off of images and what you want to show them, and that immense pressure of I have to look a particular way. That's where filters come in. That's where all these things play a part. That's where insecurities just are higher, I say, than ever in both genders. So yeah.
And with that, I think it's, if I could advise anybody that is dating, or even if you're in a relationship, I think I made fun of you at the beginning for not having social media, but that for me, that was a boundary that I learned a decade plus ago. Was I can't be in a relationship with somebody if I'm on social media, the other person can't be on social media. And I just feel like it's more bulletproof, at least for the beginning of a relationship, where like the foundation of the relationship, both people, I feel like it's incompatible, or not, maybe not incompatible, but it's just hard for both people to be invested in social media, if, or even, yeah, social media, if they're both online, because they're just become, so many pressures are built into that, from do I follow this person? When do I share this person? Why haven't they shared me? Why didn't they comment on my picture? Why are they liking someone else's pictures? And so, for anyone dating, for anyone who's in a relationship in which it maybe is a little shaky currently, I would say one of you or both of you get off social media and focus on what's going on inside. Yeah, I just feel like it reduces the superficiality of the relationship, even just wondering if this person is with me because they have X amount of followers versus if this person is with me because of who I am offline.
Yeah, I definitely do think that social media probably can play a negative part in relationships. For me, social media, I don't know what it is because it's not like everyone my age range is not on social media. Everybody is, and though let's be clear, I've always had like a Facebook, but just haven't given it the use that most people have. I've never posted much. I think I had one post once, and I think my parents made me do it. But so I've done certain things, but I've never been attached to social media or doing statuses or meeting people through social media at all. So that's just never been important for me. So I understand those people that it is a relevant thing. Like, oh, this person blocked me. That means something. To me, that doesn't really mean anything. So yeah, and so for me sometimes it's a little bit harder to try and gauge what that pressure might look like for other people. That being said, it is and I know that for somebody that hasn't had this lifestyle forever like me, I just never been interested. But it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to just be like, oh, let me get off all my social medias that I'm used to checking on a regular basis every day. You literally, for example, even X, I just got on a couple weeks ago, and you've had to remind me to go on here. I get notifications, and I'll get like, oh, that is happening, but I don't really click and go on. I'm just like, I don't have time for this. So I know that that is not the case for everybody. So I know that it's difficult to say, I'm going to hop off this to build this relationship. But it is something that you have to think about with your partner and try and do consciously, because then you remove whatever pressures that space creates for you. Like if you're a person that feels pressured from actually seeing in your partner's profile, I'm in a relationship, which I've never felt like. I've never actually been in Steph's Instagram, like from account to account. I've never done that unless I am like, oh, you posted me. I know he will post me sometimes because he tells me, but I'm like, oh, let me see what picture you post of me.
Yeah, but
That's
it's a
as
lot.
good as it gets.
It's a lot more predatory, and even the way you're explaining it, like it reveals itself on date nights. Like if you're out at a nice restaurant, both people are on their phones posting what they're eating instead of just talking about how good the food is, and then they get comments and they're addressing those comments, and two people on their phones interacting with people online. If that's what you're doing, or if that's what one of the people are doing in a relationship, that's problematic. And I will hope that for anyone who maybe doesn't know that, maybe they analyze that and consider how problematic that is, and address that, create that boundary. That was big for the beginning of our relationship. Like, I've always been someone who is super intentional of being present with somebody. If I'm with any person, I don't care who the person is. If I halfway like them or if I all the way like them, I will not exert my attention off of them unless they are on their phone. Then maybe I'll pull mine out, but I try my best to be present because I understand that the moment I do pull my phone out, it sends a signal to them that they're not important or that they're just not a priority. And the way in which that most people respond to something like that, whether true or not, I just feel like that's how the most people internalize something like that, subconsciously mostly. But yeah, I'm very considerate of how people's perceptions to things are, and so I think I think all people understand that, whether they can identify it or not. It's something that they don't enjoy, but something that they have just allowed to be normal.
Yeah, and adding to that, I think that's why it's important to know your boundaries ahead of time. If that is something that bothers you from the get go, I think even communicating certain boundaries, because a lot of people just don't know and are used to habitually being in a particular way while dating or while in relationships. I know that there are a lot of things that I mentioned to you when we were first dating. And honestly, this man took these things years into the relationship. Even things, even before we started dating, when we were just friends, I would just mention certain things that I did not like in relationships or did not like while dating somebody. And then I will find out way into our dating experience that he has carried that and has kind of been like, yeah, but you said when we were friends back a year or two ago this. I'm like, yeah, but there are situations, we're deep in it now, where certain things kind of are past due. They evolve, but when you first start dating somebody, if that person cares, they will respect those boundaries. Hey, no phones when we are on a date. Hey, I would like to be or not be present in your social media. It's crazy that we have to have those conversations nowadays, but I do feel like that is something that is relevant. Like Steph has never told me, he knows I have a Facebook, but have you ever even? I don't even know what my relationship status on Facebook is.
It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant, exactly. Like, you guys never mentioned that to me. I've never felt the need to go and change it. And we're married now, and we've been together for almost 8 years. So that in itself is just, it's not important for either of us. Whether he posted me or not, that was irrelevant to me. So it's never been a conversation. What was relevant is the way I was being represented. So, there in the beginning, when he started putting pictures of me, sometimes he might show me and tell me, hey, are you okay with me posting this picture of you? And I would be like, yeah, that's fine. Or, I don't know. So it really is having those conversations early on so that they don't become a bigger issue, because you don't want to get to the point where you're irritated that that person that you're getting to know or has just started a relationship with did not put their relationship status. And you're irritated and you're keeping this in, but that person never knew that that was relevant. They never knew that it was important to you. And here we are now with you keeping this in and being bothered by it. No, just set your standards, set your boundaries ahead of time, and you'll be able to kind of start building on a good foundation.
What would you say are some good boundaries that people might want to implement in their relationships? I would say are probably, for me, I know with us, I kind of proposed early on, like, just, we don't need to be on our phones after a certain time, especially with your parents. They would call a lot, like late at night. And so I think doing things to protect quality time and doing things to protect the relationship, no matter what stage it is important. So I would say that for sure.
Well, I think that that's a good one, actually, because even having that conversation with him and him mentioning that and him saying that, and I always definitely have told stuff, just, certain things, you have to let me know, because for me, it was so normal to talk to my parents at 10 p.m. Like, it was the average, the regular. And then one day Steph was like, we're having a conversation, and he's like, this takes away from our time. We work during the day, this is happening, but you just always pick up that call. You don't let it go. And I'm like, you know what? This is important to him, and this is something that it makes complete sense. This is our quality time. This is our time in the evening for our family. So I kind of started structuring my family a little bit to be like, hey, it's a little late, or not picking up those calls because I knew it was just habitual. So I do like that example because it is accurate, and also allowing your ego to not be a problem or out of the way, because that could have easily been me saying, what are you talking about? This is my family. You can't tell me when I can or can't talk to them. I could have easily taken that sideways, but I took it as what it was. It was about our relationship and being able to do what was best for it and what was important. So for me, a lot of, I think the boundaries that needed to be respected from the beginning were partly, yes, understanding. I think our family dynamics were so different. So that was one, is kind of understanding that I am a big part of my family and how that could interrupt certain things while still creating balance. But also, I would say even social media, like, hey, this is not something that I'm a part of. I don't want our business all out there. And I don't even think I had to have a deep conversation about it with you. It was more of like, this is just not my world. And you fully understood. And it's not even like you were deep in it, but you were definitely in.
I'm going to list some things that came from a thing that I was writing on relationships, and the things that I feel like have worked for us, but most of them I feel like are things that are specific to us, but there's some generalized ones on here as well. So like you said, yeah, minimize ego, leave small conversations small. Being present, which I feel like we've already talked about, just being present anytime you're together. Daily hugs, multiple times throughout the day, morning, evening, night.
Oh, yeah.
Extremely important for us. It's a meditative experience, but even meditating together, that's something we no longer do, but
We tried,
before.
yeah, we didn't.
Walks, daily walks, or weekend walks whenever you have that time, evening walks. I think now we don't necessarily do it together, but we do it within the same time. We have our coffee or tea together, and I feel like that is something that has been amazing that we kind of brought from Italy into our relationship. And it's a way of, it's just a check-in, it's just a way of being present together, it's a way of enjoying this experience together. And it's such a small, accessible thing that when done intently is such a beautiful experience. And the final one I would say, which I feel like is extremely important, can't be overstated. Not relying on your partner to make you happy or to provide you with a sense of security. I feel like a lot of people get into relationships prematurely because they do have insecurities. Damn, we should have started with this. I'm cooking now. But I feel like a lot of people will get into relationships because of their insecurities, and this might also be a good segue, because they're ashamed of being single, and so they, maybe ashamed is a heavy word, but they're unsettled with being single because of the societal pressures that come with that, and because it don't look good for the timeline. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people will get in these relationships prematurely, and then they'll expect these people to kind of be their biggest cheerleader, or these people to make them happy. And if you are in a relationship in that way, then it becomes lopsided, and one of the people is easily disposable.
I do want to get into that, but can I just say one more boundary that I think that it kind of left my mind, but it just came back, and that is like who you allow to have a say in your input in your
Yes.
relationship. That was something. Yep, that was something that we definitely discussed, but that is something that we at different stages had to address, especially like with me. I am extremely private, but I was also, might have been discussing something with a friend, and then I would hear certain things that I'm like, this is not, I don't want to hear from this person. And then that is something that I had to have a conversation with you too at some point, and it was because Steph is extremely expressive in many ways, and people that I was not aware of would know about something that we might have gone through because he was in you being such an expressive person and discussing things with somebody, with different people. At some point I was like, you know what, this is not something that works for me. I don't want my relationship. I want you to be having those conversations with me. We can talk about whether it's okay to have it at another layer or allow somebody else to have, if you need that feedback. But also, I don't need those people talking to me about it. If they're talking to you about it, great. Maybe depending on what the conversation tells, but mostly about, people also coming up to me like I gave them permission to be a part of my relationship.
I don't think people understand the way in which opening your relationship up to outside criticisms, or even if it's not criticism, just sharing certain things about your relationship, how vulnerable that makes your relationship to any outside noise.
You never get more. Isn't it crazy? You never get more support from people than when you want to leave somebody or when you're feeling like, oh, this is the hurdle, this is the difficult part. And I think that is why we are where we are, where there are so many, our population is like massively single, but it's because it's almost championing the, oh, if you're not getting past the tough times, you need to go, type of standard.
Yeah, but it's 1,001 ways to die, and I think not just that, but again, there's several ways in which it has negative impacts. What I think of initially is just the way in which your friends are going to see that person when you do stay with them, when you bring them around, to the cookout, the barbecue. Like,
it's gonna change if they know that y'all had a bad interaction over the weekend.
For people to move past knowing the lowlights of the person you're with. And once your crew or your circle has it in their mind that the person you're with ain't shit, it's almost impossible to protect your relationship from that. It's going to negatively impact it if you're going to keep these people. The only way you can remove offset that is by Xing the people out of your life who know the business, who know the dirt. And I don't think you're going to do that. That's obviously why you shared it with the person, because you trust them and you value them. And so something's got to give eventually.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so basically just don't let anybody get into your business. Back to the stigmas and everything around being single today.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important to love single life, like to get the most out of being single. So that way, when you're in a relationship, you don't fall victim to single people tendencies while you're in a relationship.
Such as?
Cheating. And needing to go to
But you're saying single people tendencies. If you're single, you're not cheating.
Yeah, but if you're in a relationship and you're behaving as if you're single, you're cheating.
Yeah.
And cheating isn't just physically, it's emotional, it's responsibilities, it's time. It's, there's a million ways to cheat. I think most people just are concerned about physical cheating, but not being fully present with someone is a form of cheating. Not being emotionally available for your partner because you are present for everyone else is a form of cheating. I think that a lot of people don't fully get to enjoy being single because I just feel like, men get to enjoy it, but not women. I feel like women more so have the societal pressures of being single because they're supposed to be married at a young age and then have kids at a young age, and they're not able to experience there's just limitations on the standards that are put upon a woman.
I mean, we do have physical clocks in a way. That being said, yes, there are a lot of pressures around it. Additionally, just the pressure you put on yourself in many ways as well, not only societally, but yourself. There are many women who at a particular age, like when you get to your late 20s where you want to be and you are single and you want to be in a relationship because you do want to have kids soon. And there's a lot of conversations that I've had with a lot of women. Like there is sometimes, and this happens with a lot of women, it does happen. Again, this is only based on my conversations with friends or women that I've known. It's kind of, you just start feeling like, oh, I want to have kids. And having that feeling when you are not in a relationship is a horrible thing because then it feels rushed. then it feels like you are trying to rush into a relationship. And I think that also, it's not just societal pressure, but it is kind of your own inner body pressure, inner mind pressure, and not feeling at peace. And that's how you end up lowering your standards, or even feeling guilty for not having kids at a particular age. It's just not finding the person that works for you. And that being said, there could be many people that work for you. It is not a one-off type of thing. A lot of people think that there is such thing as just there's one person in the universe, 7 billion people that could work for you, and therefore it has to be this Disney story on how that's going to happen. But I personally don't believe that that's the case. I think there could be many people for you. I think that the biggest issue in our dating life today, and the pressures that we have, is believing that there is such thing as a perfect everything. This is supposed to be perfectly synced at all times, all day, every day. There is absolutely no work that needs to be put into a relationship, because we are sold this story of the perfect relationships. And in reality, that's not the case. There is work that needs to be put in. There are kind of boundaries that need to be set, and you need to find people that are okay with those boundaries. So with that in mind, I think that part of the deal with being single today, and what a lot of people experience, is not wanting to put in that work.
Yeah, I mean, I forget in which way it came up, but something important was also just the time aspect. I feel like relationships don't really blossom with the level of, in the slow, gradual process that I feel like they need. I feel like a relationship should be slow roasted. It takes a long time. And even just the whole marriage thing, I feel like you're almost expected to marry somebody a couple of years in, 2 or 3 years in, and if if nobody's proposing, then there comes these outside people imposing on, typically the woman. Why hasn't he proposed to you yet? And we even had to deal with that. But
that's a little weird, because I feel like you had to deal with it more than me. Like, you were hearing more from people on your side than I was hearing it from mine.
I mean, I'll reserve my thoughts on that, but a relationship isn't validated by marriage. Even us, like, marriage was a choice that we decided upon for specific reasons that made sense to us as a family and to our child. But nothing changed. Like, we were committed. We were, I would say, married to each other a couple years in our relationship, and there was no title that could have added any value to what we built and what we're building. But to the
single pressures.
Yeah, the single pressures. Yeah, I think that something that I wanted to talk about, if I'm remembering properly, was just the idea of shaming single people into relationships. So I feel like there's a lot of fake relationships that happen in this online world. I mean, examples of that exist everywhere in the entertainment industry, and you can see that just in the divorce rate within the entertainment industry alone, and how many relationships ended in divorce during COVID and even after. But
the biggest problem with that was that, and I think that showed up in the numbers of the relationships that ended, is the issue was that people weren't spending time with their significant others. So you're not spending time with your significant other, all of a sudden you have to because you've been confined to the same space for X amount of time. And then it's like, what is happening? For us, I remember it being extremely just kind of flowy and easy, but it's because we were spending so much time together already.
Yeah, but my point is relationships have turned into like handbags. They've turned into, again, it's commodified. And so it's like you're wearing this human as as a like, oh, this is my Louis bag of the season or whatever. Like, you know, it's cosplay. And with relationships, kind of from my perspective, turning into that, you have people that now weaponize, oh girl, you still single, you still like, you ain't got nobody. And that is a way of them, I feel like those people aren't happy in the relationship, they're just in the relationship, and they're playing the relationship game for brand or image or whatever, but they're not internally happy in that relationship, and so they weaponize that relationship on single people, and then single people join the misery party.
So do you think that people need to, when do you feel like people need to remain single versus it's time to enter a relationship?
Good question. I would say people need to remain single until they find peace with being single, until they find peace with,
Themselves?
yeah, themselves.
Yeah. I agree. I think definitely getting to know yourself and being okay just kind of riding solo, but by being okay with riding solo, we're not talking about in a way where you're almost so but sometimes it feels like people get so comfortable being by themselves that they literally cannot sustain somebody else being in their space or being with them because they are just so comfortable in that self space. So I think that that can also be a dangerous line. It's almost like, okay, get to know myself, know the things, my likes, dislikes, being okay, being in solitude, because that is important, but not to a place of detriment where you literally cannot share a space because you'll go crazy.
Yeah, there's people that literally can't overcome the feeling of needing to be in a relationship. Like, I could name names, but we know people who need that presence of another person. And I feel like until you can overcome that feeling, then your ass don't deserve to be in a relationship. Because then that other person becomes responsible for your peace, your happiness, to a certain degree. And that's unfair.
And I think for me, I can't stress the importance of really being wholeheartedly at peace with yourself, regardless of your significant other, because it is a lot of pressure to put on somebody else to make you happy. It is a lot of pressure to put on somebody else for you to have a good day. Just knowing, hey, yeah, if I am not okay with this person, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna be like, yay, I'm gonna be happy, and no, but you should be just inside truly unbothered when it comes to just your peace. But understandably, you could be bothered by what is happening and what situation y'all might be in, but not relying wholeheartedly on that person to cover all the bases that you need emotionally, because that's a lot for both of you.
Do you want to talk about standards?
I think we kind of touched on it a bit. We can go a little bit more into it. I wanted to touch on something else. I wanted to go a little bit into kind of just older women dating. Like, what does that look like when you are at a place where it feels like you know yourself a lot in your 40s plus, and what does that look like? Because that's not something that, of course, I would have experience in, but I can imagine the difficulties in it when you feel like you're fulfilling so many areas. But it's almost like, okay, we might go a little bit into standards. It's almost like your standards do get raised with time and age.
But what are realistic and healthy
Exactly.
standards?
That
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, standards, I'm somebody who loves imperfection and loves the rawness. So I think for me, I think the things that people might not enjoy about themselves, I find beauty in, because I know that there's stories behind that. So even when we met, like your scars all over your poverty legs. And like
he loved those scars.
I just thought there's character in that. And for me, character is the most important thing. And I think for me, my standards are more so like habits. What habits does somebody have? How is somebody
Taking care of
taking
themselves.
care of themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not, you got to have X amount of money or this type of job
Yeah, I
or
think
a degree.
overall, and I think those are chains to me in many ways. But overall, what we need to remember is that we're meeting people. And so it is difficult to try and put these ridiculous standards onto people when you are trying to date. Now, I'm not saying don't have standards, but when you just set yourself up to be in a place where you're not meeting people because you have these unbelievable, unreachable things that need to be gathered beforehand, that's when it becomes just difficult to date overall.
And we're going to end it right here. Thank you so much for anyone who took the opportunity to listen. I hope no matter where you are in this beautiful world that you are well and filled with a proper dose of gratitude. Be well, everyone.